without further ado, John Ebron.
All right. Well, thank you so much. I am excited to be here to talk about this important topic. I am a self-proclaimed aspiring geek. I want to be a techno nerd when I grow up. And so I think that this is an important conversation. This is an interesting way of taking a look at technology and what we can do to really be our best in it, right? So we are talking about today, drum roll please, techno stress. Techno stress. So for those of us are in the chat or in the audience live today, give me your idea. When you hear this term, techno stress, what does that mean for you? What comes up for you? Any thoughts, any ideas? Put that in the chat. All right. Absolutely. Getting locked out of websites. You are in my mind, right? Systems not loading, not being able to find your stuff. You're so organized that you've organized your stuff so well you can't even find it, right? Yeah, yeah, absolutely. You're thinking exactly. We're on the same wavelength, right? So you've been there, right? You've been there where you're trying to log into your computer to some particular website, and it says enter your password, although the password is already saved in it, and then you enter it wrong, and it says, "Are you really a human? Let's verify." And you verify, change your password, then you got to change it again, and then you got a second authentication, and by the time you've done all that, you forgot why you wanted to go to the website in the first place, right? So it can be a lot. Technology is designed, and the intention of technology is to be there for us, to assist us, to help us, right? And sometimes it doesn't feel that way. That's what we're talking about. We're talking about this idea of techno stress, right? So it is kind of the negative side of this very positive thing. If what can we do about that? That's what we want to discuss today. What can we do to address this potentiality of techno stress so that our technology still does the things that we want it to do. All right. So let's take a look at that. So we're going to go through some ideas and behind this concept, give a little bit of history and background, and then we're going to start thinking into what we're already doing and what we can magnify to make it even more powerful for us. Yeah. So, as you can see on the slide, this is a topic that has been thought about for some time, right? I've always said technology and globalization are wonderful things, but there's some implications there we got to think about, right? And so, technostress, this concept was first coined by the clinical psychologist Dr. Craig Bond in 1984. Up until then, Rhodes' work was the on the human cost of computer revolution. It was the leading research and still is the leading research on techno stress, right? So this is the idea that we're working through to understand this. So it is a working theory that discusses the inability to keep up with technology. So again, the idea is it serves us, but somehow or another the polarity gets switched, and now we're serving it, right? So feeling the compulsion of being connected, this need of having to be connected, and that becomes the work itself. Having to become this multitasker all the time, and not just not being able to keep up with all of the changes. I don't even know what the iteration, that the general iteration is now, right? Normally, well, years ago, we should say that technology changes every 12 months, and then it went to every 6 months. Now it feels like every 2 weeks, right? So there's this idea that there's a constant flow there. There's a constant flow, and if we're not positioned well, we can kind of get steamrolled over that flow. And this is what some people are experiencing, right? This is what some people are kind of physically manifesting through this reality of techno stress. Increased headaches, heart issues, mood changes, having this feeling of standing outside of yourself, looking at yourself and saying, why are you the way that you are, right? But people are also getting fatigued. They're getting fatigued with like physical fatigue. They're getting fatigued in work productivity, just not having the drive to be as active as they know that they should be, could be, and want to be. We're having concentration issues. All of these different things are showing up in our work-life balance, how it is really impeding us from going into the life that we want. And so the natural reaction to stress in general shows up for this as well, right? So when people get stressed, one of the first things we do is we become isolative, just generally speaking, right? We circle the proverbial wagons and we say, oh, let me get myself apart and get myself together, right? So we withdraw. That's the natural default knee jerk reaction. um, and if we don't find ourselves doing that, we can see a rise in burnout and low productivity and all those things, right? So it could seem like the natural course of action, but it doesn't take us in the direction we want to go, right? It doesn't allow technology to do all the things that, not just that we want, really in this day and age, we need to have this level of intricacy, this level of sophistication working on our behalf. So we want to step away from the natural knee-jerk reaction of withdrawing from technology and finding ways to embrace it, right? So that is where we're really going with understanding techno stress and the idea that technology is not on our side, right? Instead of casting out the baby with the bathwater, for lack of better terms, we want to find a way to proactively lean into technology because there's a lot of benefit for us there, right? So, in order to do that, we need to first and foremost, let's educate ourselves on a few important things that has come up through this study of techno stress. So, there are five major aspects, five major areas that is observable through science when it comes to techno stress, that if we empower ourselves with the knowledge of this current reality, we can do something about it. So we're going to talk about techno overload, techno invasion, techno uncertainty, complexity, and techno insecurity. So these are the areas that we're going to be very proactive in understanding and developing our course of actions around, right? So what do we mean when we say techno overload, right? When a person is constantly with inputs, right? There's an inevitable overload that could take place. That's what we're talking about, right? This sense of having to always be on, to always be connected, to always be notified, to always have more and more and more coming at us, right? We know even our brains are designed, right, with mechanisms in place to keep us focusing on certain aspects of all of that visual input that comes our way. If we didn't have that, we would get overloaded, right? Our mind can't handle all that it is capable of processing. So we've got to develop some ideas around overload as well when it comes to technology. Techno invasion, similar to overload, right? But now we're talking about more like privacy issues, things that can impact us on a family structure, right? So our kids being exposed to various things. Having no boundaries when it comes to all of this access, and then how that can show up in our workplace. Like, now with the evolution of workplace orientation, right? We are now working hybrid, we're working remotely, we're working in home, we're working in the office with all these different configurations that opens up possibilities for us now, right? So it seems more likely for those to say I can work, around the clock if I feel it was advantageous for myself, right? So now all of a sudden my work day expands across my workplace to my home, into my evenings, into my nights, into my weekends, and that it slowly kind of creeps in, and before you know it, there's not a healthy boundary between your activity in your workplace and your activity in other important areas of your life. There's also techno uncertainty, right? So if I was to ask you to put one acronym in your mind when I say techno uncertainty in the chat, as a matter of fact, before I say it, I'm gonna ask you to do that. What is that one new emerging technology that we're all looking at now, right? Um, so if you feel inclined, put that in the chat. But when we talk about techno uncertainty. We're talking about that thing that is coming up next, right? That's going to totally reshape things. There you go. The wonderful word, the wonderful acronym of AI, right? So AI is changing the landscape of everything, right? So this new thing is taking over. I was in an interesting conversation with our board of directors at our local chamber here. We're talking about the onset of AI and how it is impacting the workforce here, or the small business communities here in San Antonio, Texas. And one of the gentlemen in the conversation said that AI is as revolutionary as the computer itself, as the internet itself, actually. And then someone corrected him and said, "Oh, no, no, no. AI is as revolutionary to the human condition as fire." Right? So it is totally changing everything. So if I am someone that wants to operate strictly from my historical perspective of things, right, and not advancing into something new, that could be intimidating for me, right? But also, you got to deal with not only just emerging technologies, but also the upkeep of these technologies. So you got the constant updates and the constant changes from version 1 to version 7. And now you have to purchase a whole new package and a whole new licensing and all these kind of things. Techno uncertainty can be a big topic. Also, techno complexity. So now we're talking about not just iterating with new technologies, but the fear that comes with understanding how to work in this new environment, this updated environment. Everything seems to be getting less intuitive and more difficult to just operate in day-to-day operations, right? So these are the thought processes that are coming in cahoots with this new emerging technology that we're all being exposed to, right? How do we get our devices to work together when you have a Windows this and a Linux that and an Apple's this, and they all need to, talk seamlessly? How does that work, right? And then of course you got competing systems. Which one should I, use as legacy and just kind of let go and move into the whole new iteration? How do I make that kind of migration happen? All of that can become super complex. And on a larger scale, as technology advances, it has a larger impact on the labor force as a whole, right? So we talked about AI already. What is AI going to do for the labor force? I was reading an article uh, uh, just recently talking about how they're expecting a 40% of jobs either being impacted or eliminated through the birth of AI, right? So what does that mean when, for example, I'll give you a good example, a military example. Not just AI, but robotics, right? So in our transportation force, because of the advancements of technology answering the needs of a changing, landscapes of war in the military, yeah, we moved from transporters being trained on how to drive certain types of vehicles to now how to be mechanical operators in secure locations, managing autonomous vehicles on the war field, right? So now you don't need 80,000 drivers. I'm just putting some generic numbers out there. You need 40,000 operators, right? So it changes that labor force, right? But we're talking about just the transporters. What about the labor force that provides meals for the transporters? If the population reduces by 50% because of um, emerging technology, you can see where the snowball effect can take place, right? So we got that happening, but also in the area of insecurities, we got generational differences that are taking place, right? We feel that we have no control over what's going to be invented next and how it's going to impact us. All of this is creating stress, 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 right? So the thing is, the next step that we need to think about is, what do we want to do with this? And we talked about our knee-jerk reaction is to become more isolated when we experience stress. But what we're really wanting to do is to engage here, to engage. So how do I embrace technology so it stays in the position of serving me, of serving my organization, and not the other way around, right? So here are some ideas, but we want to open this up to those who are attending today to also share your own strategies that you are currently doing to keep your techno stress down to a minimum, right? But here's some things that we can think about. First and foremost, have clear boundaries when it comes to our technology and how we're going to use it. So whether we're addressing that techno invasion we were talking about earlier, how do we do that? How do we set our technology in a position where it doesn't intrude, but it's still there for us when we need it? Setting those clear boundaries, super, super important. Also have fun with technology. Think about it this way. Your life is a set of parallel projects, right? Two projects taking place at the same time. You are living your life while you are constantly building your life, right? And so the healthy dynamic is to set aside time to do both, right? Set aside time to play with technology and to see where you can incorporate it into the next area, right? One of the things I always would say as I implemented new technology systems in my office was I would say, this is our philosophy. We paid for this, right? So it will do exactly what we want it to do. So we don't approach technology of saying, what can this technology do? We approach technology saying, you will do exactly what I want you to do. I just got to figure out how to configure you to do that, right? So we need to get excited about technology, play around with it, right? Then we can figure out where we need to keep redundant systems for overlap, for appropriate overlap, and then where we can pare down on certain things. You know, do I need to have a separate computer for this and that, or is there a way where we can combine those activities into one computer system or one software suite where we can get all of those things done, right? So it's continual growth and development through the lens of technology. Yeah. And finally, we want to, wherever we're at, right, we want to be there. So we want to be mindful about the uses of technology, mindful of how well it is still continuously serving us today. There may be a particular software that we use to collaborate, for example, and it worked well in past environments. But now, in this present day environment, is it still serving to the degree that we want it to serve, right? These are just a few hints, just a few ideas. What are some other things? Please, feel free to sign off in the chat. What are some other things that you do in order to make technology work for you and not the other way around? Give you a few minutes to think about that and put those in the chat as we get ready to move into our next section or close out this part of the training. What are some of those ideas? All right, someone says that we work to keep the cost down. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Anyone else? I remember a big, now I'm aging myself to give you this story, but a big jump in our workflow management uh, during what my time in the military was moving from wet signature to digital signature for everyday authorizations for things. So something has to be signed by the appropriate office in order to move this thing along. And we are moving from actually kind of printing out the papers and putting it on someone's desk who may be on leave and they've got a couple of days off and then it gets stuck under a pile of other things, and before you know it, this 1 day process takes a month to get done, right? So we wanted to implement this digital signature process into our workflows, but it was very intimidating. It was very intimidating for a lot of individuals, to include a lot of senior leaders, right? So, I was supposed to be convinced that individuals were able to handle multinational operations, right? But they're outdone by a signature here button on a Microsoft SharePoint framework, for example, right? So, what we did was we made the decision to implement a new strategy, but we didn't make a decision to do any kind of onboarding, training, socializing this new system before we went straight into execution mode, right? So, what the moral of my story is, when you decide what you want to do with emerging technology, also create a glide path where you have opportunity to play with it, where you have opportunity to see that you can't break it, for example, right? And to implement that with a timeline that gives everyone time to get acclimated to it first, right? So when if we have the personality that is very assertive and making things happen, we need to pare that down with a more systematic approach of how we address those things. Yeah. So that's one way, right? Making sure we got a solid glide path to implement new technologies. Another thing that comes to mind when it comes to implementing technologies, managing technologies, is having a a space where you can have continual collaboration about the use of that technology, right? These helping forums that you can put down best practices and implement those into new policy, for example, right? So again, it doesn't have to be an immediate, I'm thinking of new technology, I'm implementing new technology, right? We can create a way of bringing that technology in that is supportive of the current environment, and it is supportive of the new emerging environment as well, right? Someone else says take time to play. Absolutely. Play with it early and see if it sounds helpful. Absolutely. Absolutely. Right. It will do exactly what you want it to do. That's the philosophy, right? That's the mindset. This will do exactly what I want it to do. Now I just have to play around with it to see how that works. Yeah. So when it comes to techno stress, just like other areas of stress, we need to lean into it. We need to embrace what it can do for us, right? So from a distance, it may be more confusing, maybe even harmful. But if we embrace it, if we lean into it, we'll find a way to kind of bring it in and make it a part of our useful environment, right? So we really want to focus in on making technology work for us and not against us. So I want you to continue to think about all the things you're already doing, right? First and foremost, what are the things you're already doing that works well with implementing technology? But also think of new ways that you can make this a fun, workable strategy for yourself of staying up on technology so you can capitalize on all the benefits that technology can bring to yourself personally and to your organization. So we're going to stop here. And I would like to hand this over to Kai for some additional information.
Yeah, thank you so much, John. And so insightful. And appreciate your time and energy. And thanks to everyone for coming out. Before you go though, I know it's been a busy day and it's Friday. But we have a survey for you to complete through FitMinded on who's helping us evaluate these seminars. And I'll drop more information in the chat about them. And when you complete that evaluation, you'll enter into a drawing for a 1-hour consultation with John Ebron, sponsored by BLI. So fill out that survey and stick around. And before we do that, though, I want you to enjoy this brief preview of next month's webinar hosted by Jamie Peterson titled Opening Up About Mental Health.
When a coworker arrives at work coughing and sneezing, we ask if she's okay. We encourage her to go home to rest and take care of herself. See a doctor if the symptoms persist. Yet too often when a coworker arrives at work subdued and distracted, we don't always ask if he's okay. We too often do not acknowledge the signs that a coworker is struggling with their mental health. And let's be honest, mental health conversations aren't always easy or comfortable. They can be fraught with stigma, uncertainty, and discomfort. My name is Jamie Peterson. I'm a counseling and educational psychologist on a mission to empower everyone to reach their goals and thrive. So join me in May to talk about why it's important to open up about mental health. Create an environment in which mental health conversations are normalized and encouraged.
All right. Really looking forward to that discussion. So please use the link in the chat to go
And
check that out.
sneezing, we ask if she's
Um,
okay. We encourage her to go home to rest and take care of herself.
Techno
See a doctor.
stress. It could not be more perfect. All right, let's get over to that QR code, John, and we'll so people can fill out that survey and hopefully win a free hour with you. And thanks again for everybody for coming out. You can keep up with Wendy and I discussing work-life balance news at Balancing Life's Issues, the podcast, available wherever you stream podcasts. And you can do so by going to the show, podcast.show/BLI. And if you're having trouble getting to the QR code, it's all good. I'm putting the survey in the chat here, so you can go there to fill it out. And John, I'm happy to hijack the screen presentation if you want me to hop in.
If you don't mind, I'm having some techno stress on my end. So
It's all good. We're in this together, right? We're not going to fight it. We're going to embrace it.
there
This
we
is
go.
life.
Super. Awesome.
But thanks again, everyone, for coming out. And there we go. We are no longer techno stressed, John. We are techno zen. The QR code is on the screen.
Awesome. So yeah, thank you so much, guy, and thank you so much for attending, everyone. You know, again, I wish you a stress-free techno life, right? As we embrace the technology and all the wonderful things, and maybe sometimes the not so wonderful things that come with it. But again, this is there for us to be better. It just depends on how equipped we are to bring this into our whole self. So. Hope everyone has had a great time with the webinar today and hope to see you again soon.